It is time for Lettermen Live. It is time for Lettermen Live presented by Wendy's. Tim, you know exactly what I'm about to say, yet I'm still going to say it. You've had Wendy's nugs dipped in sauce. I know you have, Tim. You told me. But have you had them covered in sauce? Because Wendy's new saucy nugs take the crispy and spicy nugs you love. They turn them up to 11. Choose between flavors like buffalo, honey barbecue, garlic parm, the real heat seekers, as I like to say, the ball knowers. They try the spicy ghost pepper only on Wendy's signature spicy nugs. That's 7 delicious ways to try the nugs you already love. Pick a flavor, grab some extra napkins, and prepare to nug like you've never nugged before for a whole new way to nug. It's got to be Wendy's and participating U.S. Wendy's. Tim May, the 41-year vet. We're back. We're going to talk a little bit Ohio State National Championship because we're still not over that remarkable 4-game run. We're going to talk a little bit about offseason to-do list. I think there's a bevy of things the Buckeyes need to take care of. Coaching carousel still spinning. I believe Justin Fry's sitting on one of those little horses. I believe Chip Kelly might be sitting on one of those horses. Jim Knowles has already exited the ride to his right and made his way to State College. So, there's potential, of course, every offseason with Larry Johnson, just because of the age factor. So we're going to talk about all that. We can't go any further, though. I've got one more question about the national championship for Tim. It might spur a
debate.
20-minute discussion. It might spur a debate. It might give 5 minutes, but I'm going to ask anyway.
Wait, I want people to know one thing. It's clear this isn't rehearsed, and at least from my end. And then number two, I have no idea what you're fixing to ask me. I hope it's something I can answer. Go,
Tim. I'm gonna ask it as plainly as I can. Who's the one player from the national championship run that surprised you in just the 4-game playoff? We watched 12 games of the regular season. Is there a player that made the jump from the regular season to the postseason? Is there a player that stepped up that needs more recognition that we haven't talked about enough? Who's the one guy from the regular season on November 30th to win the ball kicked off against Tennessee and then on to those 4 games that stepped up in the playoff that you don't think is getting enough recognition?
Okay, my consolation answer is G. Scott Jr. I think G. Scott Jr. played his rear end off both blocking and when he was asked to catch the football. Yeah. And I think it really helped him possibly getting a shot at the next level. But what we've said all along, at least what I've said all along, because I'm into puns, is when it came to this 2024/25 Ohio State football team, whether they won the national championship, depending on where there's a will, there's a way. Will Howard, I think early even in the season, we were criticizing some things he did, but I liked the way he seemed to get better every week. I mean, I'm not knocking it. I thought he played well from the get-go, but he played great in the postseason, especially when he got knocked down. We all saw him get that head bump against Michigan, but come back in and lead a late first half touchdown drive throwing the football. How much that bang bothered him the rest of the day, only he knows for sure, but didn't quite seem to be himself, except I don't think they would have put him back in there if there was conjecture, just because of the way Ohio State does things on the medical side. But the way Will Howard played right out of the gate against Tennessee, against Oregon, against Texas, answering the first punch by Texas with a long drive of their own, the Buckeyes, went from the middle of late in the first quarter all the way into the second quarter. That was an interesting, you got to admit, that was an interesting first 20, 25 minutes of that game, right? About playing keep away from each other. But then the way he played in the national championship game when Ohio State answered the bell after the score was tied at 14, and he led them on that long drive, including a 4th and 2 conversion where he could have scored, but didn't. I may be mixing up my games now. But the bottom line is I just like the way Will Howard played, and in my opinion, helped himself immensely when it comes to getting a shot in the National Football League. That's you've always got to have that guy. You know that, Spence. That that guy who handles the ball every play. You've always got to have that guy step up when it comes to the whether it's one championship game or four, which was 4 championship games, and he did that, I think, with aplomb.
So you went offense.
PLOMB. Go ahead. I'm
There
sorry.
you go. You went offense. I know you have a defensive guy. I'll give my offensive guy then. I guess we'll do
Okay.
this for offense and for defense because I know you have somebody. I know
Oh,
it.
yeah.
I've worked with you for too long, Tim. I know all your tricks of the trade. I know that you're going to give me a defensive guy, so I'll just go ahead and take an offensive guy, and then we'll move into defense. My offensive guy. There's so many different ways that you could go with this. I think I'm going to say it was Brandon Inniss, and that's probably not like the most like shiny object pick. There's Luke Montgomery to pick. There's Tegrish Bulla to pick. Those guys really stepped up. I thought Carson Hinsman played well in the postseason, but the reason that I say Brandon Inniss is because he had a ridiculous block that we talked about right after the Rose Bowl, for
Yep.
Trevion Henderson on a touchdown run. And we did talk about that quite a bit when it happened. But then I keep watching the national championship back over again, and I know Ohio State fans have watched it back over again.
Yeah.
The 3rd and 7 that he caught with Will Howard getting pressure right in his face, the route that he ran on that play is not going to go unnoticed in the building. That was a nasty, nasty route to get wide open on a 3rd and 7 and convert that 3rd down. I thought that was a big play in the game.
Yep.
And so I will take Brandon Inniss, but also, the more that leaks out about this team meeting from after the Michigan game, I've talked to a couple people now who have mentioned one of the guys who was pretty vocal in that meeting was Brandon Inniss. And he doesn't play a ton. He has a role, but didn't have like a big role like Cornell Tate, Jeremiah Smith, and Emeka Egbuka. He wanted to be a leader of this team when I talked to him in August, and I wrote about that at lettermenrow.com. Maybe I'll have to dig that story back up. He wants to be probably in the running to be a captain next year. And so the more that we hear about the story that Ryan was talking about being told of this team, I think Brandon Inniss deserves some credit. Whatever he said in that team meeting after the Michigan game that everybody keeps talking about, but it's finally slowly but surely leaking out. I'm told that Brandon Inniss had a pretty vocal role in that meeting. And so I'm going to give that my offensive guy that we're not talking about enough from this championship run to Brandon Inniss because he did all three. The leadership on December 2nd, a block on January 1st, and then a catch on January 20th kind of shows you his trajectory is like he can do it all. And if you need a replacement for Emeka Egbuka, look no further than number 11.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, they're still loaded at wide receiver, and will stay that way. And by the way, I'm mixed up, of course, because I'm 70, going on 71 years old. I'm so frail. No, I mixed up the my plays because it's easy to do. There were so many playoff games and so many great plays, but the run, of course, the bumbling, stumbling, finally falling run was against Texas. They kept that drive alive in the second half, but the dropping the ball, dropping the dime down the Coke bottle to Jeremiah Smith on that 3rd and 11 will go down in Buckeye lore as one of the gutsiest, even though Chip Kelly wouldn't call it that, one of the gutsiest and clutchest passes thrown by a Buckeye. Very, very similar to Holy Buckeye against Purdue way back in 2002. Craig Krenzel to Michael Jenkins for the touchdown in that game. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you about Brandon Inniss. I mean, the thing that stands out about Brandon Inniss is he wasn't on the field all the time. And a lot of guys would get sour if they weren't all on the field all the time, especially a guy as talented as him, a guy who had to, once again, sort of wait his turn because his sensational freshman came in by the name of Jeremiah Smith, which kind of convoluted the pecking order wide receiver, justifiably so. And yet every time Brandon Inniss was out there, it's like he'd been playing all day from an effort standpoint and from a get after it standpoint. And like you said, the voice he probably had in that meeting, wow, this just backs that up, for anybody who's playing on the field. That's why this guy was talking, because he backs it. The walk matches the talk, and that's what stood out about him. Now,
Well, I mean,
from a defensive side, um, all kinds of ways you can go, in my opinion. And sometimes it's the guys that didn't have a lot of stats that still had big time performances. And I think a guy who had a tremendous postseason was Denzel Burke. I mean, because you hardly heard his name, and he made some plays along the way. And that's a guy that needed to have a big time postseason for the Buckeyes to do defensively what they did. And so I'm going to immediately just throw his name out there. I mean, obviously, Caleb Downs and Lathan Ransom and even Davis and Nick Benosin. Davis and Nick Benosin had a tremendous postseason. But Denzel Burke is a guy, especially you give it up to him the way he played against Oregon in the rematch when it was a make good game for him, a redemption game for him. I mean, the whole postseason was about redemption for everybody on the Ohio State football team. But Denzel Burke in particular, I think, helped himself immensely because there were some pretty good wide receivers they went against in that postseason run, 4 straight games and win. So I'm going to say Denzel Burke, final answer. And everybody knows how much I like Denzel Burke to begin with, So I'm not saying it's tainted, but I like the young man, and he came through.
So I like that pick. Like you said, when you don't hear a guy's name, that's usually a good thing out at corner. And there were some penalties thrown in the national championship game. They're late. None of them were on Denzel, I believe. Maybe I don't think any of them were. I just thought that he played really clean and really well. And I don't think he gets enough credit for the physicality that he brought to the cornerback spot. Like I remember the Nebraska game. He's coming off just call it what it is, a horrendous performance against Oregon. And he doesn't get burnt in that Nebraska game, really. I think he gave up a longer catch, but I think that was just a good play by the receiver, and sometimes you tip your cap.
That happens sometimes.
I remember in the first quarter of that Nebraska game, he shot his guns there and made a tackle either for a loss or at the line of scrimmage and brought some physicality there in the short passing or the run game. And it's like, well,
you could see what it meant to him.
Yeah, and I don't think his physicality ever got enough credit. Even as a freshman, way back in 2021, I thought he was a pretty physical corner. He's always been that way. And even when he got into some ruts throughout his career, that sophomore slump that he went through in 2022 where he was injured, I still thought he brought some physicality. This year especially, though, he proved that, run support in the NFL, you need a run supporter at cornerback. I think Denzel's probably a guy that can do that for you. My pick is, again, a little off the wall. I know I'm going with guys who don't play large roles, but played enough of a role where I can highlight them and just say, like, hey, something that's –
Can I guess?
You can. Go ahead.
I'm going to guess, and it's going to be wrong, probably. I'm going to guess Jordan Hancock or Lorenzo Styles Jr. or Kenyatta Jackson Jr.
No, those are 3 good guesses. Lorenzo played more and more as the playoff went on. Kenyatta, I thought, played really well as the playoff went on. We're highlighting just some guys that maybe we haven't talked about in the couple weeks since the national championship game. It's been 10 days already, Tim. I can't believe that. But the guy that I'm going to is a guy who 11 snaps against Akron, 27 in the blowout against Purdue. I think that was a lot in the second half, but he played really well there. And also, I think, that was a game that Tyleik Williams didn't play in. He had 16 against Northwestern as Tyleik Williams was still not back yet. Then he only had 10 against Indiana. So, those are the 4 games he played double-digit snaps. And he just looked like a freshman who was trying to find his way and get his feet wet in these blowouts. And then all of a sudden, 16 snaps against Tennessee, 14 snaps against Oregon, 14 in a really close game against Texas. So those are not garbage time snaps like maybe some of those Tennessee snaps, some of those Oregon snaps. Texas, 14 snaps, and then 11 snaps in the national championship game. Houston, slowly but surely and very, very quietly, built a very, very strong college football playoff run for himself. Double-digit snaps in all of those games. It's not the Oregon or the Tennessee games that I'm really looking at because those were, again, snaps that a lot of them came in blowouts, although he was on the field for the first series against Oregon. It's the Texas and Notre Dame games where those were not games where you can just throw a freshman out there and say, hey, go learn. Like, if you're not sure if he can play at that level for those in those games, he can't play.
Yeah.
And Larry Johnson, Ryan Day, Jim Knowles, the whole cast of characters there trusted him in two very big games,
Yes.
Texas and Notre Dame, and two very close games as well. It's very telling to me that Ohio State feels pretty good about its defensive tackle depth heading into next year with Caden McDonald. Obviously, he's a guy that we've been watching for a couple years now. But then a freshman, Edric Houston, getting that kind of run in the playoff, and he's moving to three tech. He's going to have a full off season at three technique. I'm very intrigued by what he can do. I'm going to give him some flowers here for the CFP run that he had.
Yeah. Edric Houston could be that next. I mean, I hate to put this on him, but he was a 5-star prospect.
Yeah.
Or 4, depending on where you look. But he could be that next really great, just athletic three technique who just comes on and makes plays, man. And, maybe a little bit more weight, a little more lead in his pencil, whatever you want to call it. But I really like where that guy, his trajectory, where he's headed, because he's got the football. If you watch him, he's got the football acumen. He wants to be where the ball is, takes care of his responsibility, but wants to be where the ball is. There's a lot of, cliche want to in him, but I don't know if you agree, but I like what he brought the last several weeks, because you saw, you always wonder when a guy is kind of ballyhooed as being, maybe the next edge guy or somebody out on the edge who's going to make plays for you from that realm, move inside. How is he taking it? Well, he's, the GOAT, which is Larry Johnson. The GOAT must have really convinced him about his potential, about moving there, and he embraced it. You could tell he embraced it, right? At least I could, and good for him, because it's going to pay off for him in the next couple of years, I do believe.
Tim, I look at Edric Houston, and there's talk of different guys moving down to the edge, and is Ohio State going to run an odd front next year? And if they do, I think he's the perfect 3-4 defensive end, because you'll have edge rushers on one of the sides of him at linebacker who's an edge rusher. Like, if they do choose to go odd front at any time, I think he's the perfect 3-4 defensive end. But if they stay with that even front at three technique, the guy I'm looking at, if you want an example of what Edric Houston can be in a Larry Johnson 4-down defensive line, I wasn't covering the team then. I was watching as a fan of college football. You were covering the team then. You know who I'm about to say. Like, at 6'3", 286, Draymond Jones was really, really good.
Yeah.
And at 6'3", 270 during his freshman year, you're getting a full weight rooms winter and spring with Mickey Marotti. If you told me Edric Houston's up to 6'3", 280, and he's still moving the way that he, was moving this year, you tell me that he's a three technique for 2 years at Ohio State and then goes to the NFL as a really high draft pick as an interior defensive lineman who can just absolutely maul in the pass rush and can shed blocks and be a good run stuffer, won't surprise me at all. And Draymond has carved out a pretty remarkable NFL career. He might be the most underrated of Larry Johnson's defensive linemen to come through Ohio State, to be honest, just because we think about all the edge rushers, Sam Hubbard and Jalen Holmes and Tyquan Lewis and the Bosas and Chase Young, but and I'm leaving out a couple there, but Jonathan Cooper's having a pretty remarkable NFL career right now too so far. But man, Draymond's still in the league. He's still playing really well, and that's a Larry Johnson product. I could see Edric Houston eventually carving out that role if he sticks with this three technique thing, because he's only going to get better. And I thought that we saw some real glimpses of this guy can be a star. I thought we saw some real glimpses of that during his freshman season, especially during the playoff when they didn't need to have him out there and they chose to.
Yeah, I agree 100%. By the way, Caden really came on. Caden McDonald really came on this year in crucial situations. And another guy we're leaving out. We named who our two guys were. Obviously Denzel Burke was a starter, so maybe I cheated a little bit on the answer there, except I really liked the way he rebounded and played after that, Oregon game, which could have put him in a shell he never got out of. What kind of nut has this kind of shell? But another guy is Arvell Reese, man. You know,
Mhm.
I wasn't sure what to expect from him from the spring and in preseason, but Alvaro Reese was in there in some critical times, uh, in the postseason, especially on that goal line stand against Texas on that first down stop. He and JT Tuimoloau, and which kind of helped set up what happened after that. So there are a bunch of guys that are really going to be counted on uh, coming up this year that had to play bit roles or whatever you want to call them, not cameos, because they got more than just walking through the scene. They had some dialogue, but
Yeah.
there's going to be a lot of dialogue about these guys, I think, moving forward. And you had to have guys, as you look forward about. I mean, the tremendous number of guys they're losing from the defense. It's crazy, and they're going to have a new coordinator, and so the new coordinator is kind of walking in with a little bit of is going to walk in or step up, depending on where Ryan Day goes with this,
Yeah.
uh, with a blank sheet of paper, but also a blank starting lineup, really, when you think about
Mhm.
it. And so spring is going to be quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I look at Arvell. We can talk about him a little bit. Just guys that we're intrigued by from this playoff run. You know, double digit snaps in every game before the Oregon game. He only played 6 snaps against Oregon because of the way Oregon spreads teams out. He
Correct.
wasn't really necessary. Uh, double digit snaps in each of the next 4 games. But that Indiana game, he plays 7 because Indiana was going to spread you out. Michigan, he plays 36 because we know what Michigan's offense was, as reductive as they were offensively, and somehow still won that game. But 19 snaps, a lot of them in garbage time against Tennessee, 2 snaps against Oregon, 6 against Texas, and 6 against Notre Dame. The Buckeyes figured some things out where Jordan Hancock could make all of the difference in this defense. And so Arvell Reese wasn't necessary given the personnel that they had. Not that he wasn't necessary in the championship run, like you said. Goal line, he was really critical there. Heavy sets, he was really critical there. All 6 of his snaps against Notre Dame, I thought were noteworthy because of the situations. But when you have Jordan Hancock as a difference maker like that, you don't really need a third linebacker, and you weren't going to take Sonny or Cody off the field. So,
Yep.
you know, I think that the role is definitely going to expand. That's not any breaking news there, but his snaps came in high leverage moments, is what I'm trying to say, and not a lot of snaps in the playoff run, but certainly somebody that you should, pat on the back for the performance that he had, like you said, on that goal line against Texas, and then in the 6 snaps he played against Notre Dame, all critical downs. So, those are good names to know moving forward because, believe it or not, maybe four, we haven't gotten the schedule yet, but maybe 4 weeks from spring ball. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
these are all guys that you're going to have to either know or appreciate as they walk out the door. So that was good, Tim. I'm glad we had that 20-minute discussion. I knew it was going to end up being 20 minutes. Uh, that's the way that we do things around here. Any other closing thoughts here on those guys? Do you have any other floating names in your brain? I know how you operate a little bit.
Yeah. I'm curious. I really am curious to see what's going to happen in the wide receiver room in the spring. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And who's really going to step to the fore, for example. And I think it's because, and of course, the curiosity is when you're playing for a national championship, you don't get you get every game is critical. Even obviously they lost to. Every game is critical. Man, would it have been a luxury to get the future quarterback in there,
Mm-hmm.
for more plays. If in fact it's going to be Julian saying, and everything points to that being the case. Uh, but a lot of people are putting their eggs in the Julian saying basket, with probably Tavian St. Clair being the backup of a pure freshman. Of course, by August, Tavian St. Clair will have been around for 8 months in the program. I mean, he was there. We got to watch the warm ups before the national championship game. So he's been on campus. I mean, obviously, and he's been hanging around and he's getting a feel for things. But they're putting a lot. And why shouldn't you? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm kind of double speaking here because I would like to have seen more of Julian Sayin as this year went on. Uh, Sneak him in there for like 2 series if in fact you've determined that he's going to be the guy. Uh, Especially in a couple of those blowout wins in
Yeah.
the playoffs. sneak him in there instead of playing the bench at quarterback. Play the guy that you go, because Devin Brown had already declared he's moving on, but Devin Brown hadn't played hardly at all either. So,
Yeah.
if something had happened to Will Howard over the span of those 4 games, it would have been quite interesting to see which way they would have gone. Clearly, they would have gone Devin Brown's way based on the way they handled things. But
Yeah.
man, if Julian Sayin's your guy, let him play, right? That was just like with Texas. I do think Arch Manning got banged up against Ohio State,
Mm-hmm.
in that one run he had, because we really didn't see him again, if I remember correctly. But the bottom line is, I think that is the big question mark. And then you see where Ryan has said that their quarterback's coming out of their current quarterback room, it looks like, barring any kind of catastrophe. I would just like to have seen more of that guy, because, man, what an opener. It could be Arch Manning versus Julian Sayin in Ohio Stadium in the heat of August. Of course, it'll probably be a night game, right? But,
Yeah. Well, no, I don't think so.
oh, yeah, it could be big. Yeah, probably big noon. But you know what I mean? That's the thing I would like to have seen them grab a few of those opportunities for Julian Sayin in the postseason. But that's asking a lot, because you're playing for a national championship.
Man, Tim, can you imagine how angry everybody's going to be when that Texas game gets announced as big noon?
Well, maybe they'll put a dome over Ohio Stadium and air conditioning it.
I don't think so. Maybe they'll move it to the Hoosier Dome, like Gene Smith said.
Yeah, the heat. Here's the thing we're going to find out. I went to Texas in August in 2005 to do some stuff in advance of the first ever Ohio State-Texas game, which later that year, of course, was in Ohio Stadium, was a classic. Vince Young with the comeback win. Should have won the Heisman Trophy that year. I voted for him. But the bottom line is, well, maybe he did win it. I can't remember. But the bottom line is,
he
we
didn't.
all thought Ohio State had the advantage playing Tennessee in frigid temperatures. Let me tell you something. It was over 100 degrees those 4 days I was at Texas in 2005 in August, and that was before global warming really heated up. So maybe Texas will have the advantage, coming north. We'll see. But, it's too bad. But, man, that's already that's just already stamped with, wow, what an opener, right?
Oh, yeah, because Ohio State's going to unveil its new 2024 banner up there at the same time that Texas is there. Matthew McConaughey will likely be in the building. I won't be surprised if, remember a couple years ago when LeBron was at the opener against Notre Dame because the season hadn't started yet. You talk about star power. Will it surprise me if, not being political here, but will it surprise me if Ohio State grad, the vice president, is there? No. That's the kind of stuff that we're talking about. But that obviously is for next August.
And
it is interesting.
You're already telling people get there early. You're already telling people get there early.
Oh, yeah, get there at 8 a.m. Get there at 5 if it's a noon game. The thing that I think is interesting, Tim, is that we might have the largest temperature discrepancy in Ohio Stadium history, because the last game that Ohio State played was 8 degrees at kickoff, and the next game Ohio State plays might be 98 degrees at kickoff. So the two Ohio Stadium, the last 2 times Ohio State was in Ohio Stadium. I just think that's interesting, but obviously that's all. That's all talk. Yeah, that's all talk.
What a sport, though, when you think about it. I mean, they ask a lot of these young men. Let me just put it that way.
Yeah, that's all talk for August, obviously, and July and June and May and all. It's all off season. We're going to be talking about Arch Manning versus Julian Sayin and Ohio State versus Texas. Tim,
let's talk, because we didn't get to talk a lot the other day because I was standing in front of a. Go ahead.
Give me one more thing that I wanted to say. You said that it was interesting about Julian Sayin, the freshman that I think I've got my eye on this offseason, that I've heard some real buzz about. And I know that it's already a loaded room, but man, Mylan Graham, the things that I'm hearing about Mylan Graham, because he was a summer enrollee. He didn't come in the spring, and so he was behind. Didn't play very much at all. I think the first snaps that he ever took at Ohio State were in the win over Tennessee, which is kind of crazy. Let me make sure that I'm not putting out bad information there. Mylan Graham's first action. Okay, so he played 4 snaps against Western Michigan. He played 2 against Purdue, and then he played 7 against Tennessee. The most snaps he's ever played in a game were in the college football playoff. So
Yes.
kind of interesting there. Excuse me. I just have my eye on him. Just
Me too.
that. Tim, I will say what else I have my eye on because it's the lunch hour. Getting a little hungry here. Is the Wendy's new saucy nugs. I might just get in my car and go get some after this. Wendy's new saucy nugs. Take the crispy and spicy nugs you love and turn them up to 11. Choose between flavors like buffalo, honey barbecue, garlic parm, real heat seekers. They try the spicy ghost pepper. Only on Wendy's signature spicy nugs. That's 7 delicious ways to try the nugs you already love. Pick a flavor, grab some extra napkins, and prepare to nug like you've never nugged before. For a whole new way to nug, it's got to be Wendy's at participating U.S. Wendy's. Tim.
Yeah.
I need more fallout here. Jim Knowles is in State College. The last time I talked to you, there was a forklift interrupting your analysis of Jim Knowles to Penn State. The people still loved it. It's one of our most watched YouTube videos since the end of the college football playoffs, so in the last week or two.
You're kidding me.
Oh yeah, people loved it. And you know what? They said we need Tim in front of more forklifts.
Maybe,
because it added to the ambiance.
I was in front of a palm tree. The palm tree wasn't soundproof though, and that finally ended up into going into a maintenance back door to Treasure Island, the resort there, the casino hotel, to finally block out the noise. I was thinking about going there to begin with, but I didn't think it would make for a great background. But boy, was I wrong, dude. If you ever, because I was standing with my buddy Jeff Snook, and I didn't want to wake him up in the hotel room to do the thing. So I've tried to find a quiet place in a resort hotel casino. It was impossible. And like you said, we would have owed somebody money if I'd stayed in the lobby because they were playing songs I'd never heard of, but I'm sure have singers and talent that would have had to been reciprocated or remunerated. But yeah, I enjoyed that. But I wanted to, like everybody else, I was on semi-vacation there, but keeping up with what was going on. But the more I've looked into the Jim Knowles thing, what I've basically come across with is that his agent was shopping him around, as is pretty obvious now. And I think I kind of said that during that thing and during that video. But I mean, his agent wanted him to become the first $3 million defensive coordinator in college football, which I think he succeeded. And I'm not sure, but I get the impression that Ohio State balked at going that high, in the final analysis. Whether that would have made a difference, only Jim Knowles knows, right? But you got to strike while the iron's hot when you're an assistant football coach or even a head coach for that matter, right? If you're climbing the ladder. And so, as a lot of people see this as not even a lateral move based on success for the programs, it's only a gradual move down, I think, for Jim Knowles in terms of the program he's going to, one of the great programs in major college football. But I get the impression that there was a line drawn before it got to $3 million by Ohio State. They're just not going that high. And of course, I think with his bonuses and stuff, he made over $3 million for Ohio State from this past football season. So, he got that going for him. But it's the idea that there was a rift between him and Ryan Day that dated back to the post-Oregon game is, I'm not saying it's laughable, but I got the impression that's at least, as far as the Ryan Day side of things, I don't think there was ever a thought. Because remember, we asked about that at a couple of press conferences in so many words. And, every assistant coach is liable for an occasional, hey, what the hell were we doing there? Kind of a question from his head coach. Same thing offensively, with Chip Kelly maybe after that game with some things that went on in the last minute or so of that game. And I got the impression there was no rift between Jim Knowles and Ryan Day. And also this idea that he had a problem. I'm not sure where this. I don't buy this because I've had no one confirm this. I just heard this from the media, from some media outlets. But Larry Johnson, all Jim Knowles ever called Larry Johnson was the GOAT. Greatest of all time as defensive line coach. And I have gotten no indication from anyone. Does the defense coordinator sometimes want the defensive line coach to do certain things? Absolutely. Did they change up some things after that Oregon game up front? Absolutely they did. And it worked. I mean, it was really good. And all we were doing was singing, in my opinion, singing the praises of both Knowles and Larry Johnson. By the way, that front four meaning 8-10 guys, played right from that point forward. It was remarkable run by Ohio State front four. And like I told you, from the middle of that season on, as good a play by the defense as I've seen, and maybe going back to 2014 in the playoffs. But probably before that, 2002, the way that defense came on in that national championship year. Because, man, you look back on that defense, if you don't remember how good that is, wow, just go look it up, especially against Miami in the national championship game, a team that a lot of people thought was going to run all over Ohio State. So I think it basically came down to Jim Knowles was trying to strike while the iron was hot, and did so. And you can't hold that against him. But to make up may not be the right term. It may be overstating it. But to drum up some other scenarios that he was leaving Ohio State in a bad light, I think is overselling what went on there. It could be as basically as simple as he has Pennsylvania in his blood. He grew up in Philadelphia. We all know his give and take with Bill Landis, another Philadelphia native, throughout his time at Ohio State. Bill Landis, of course, with another organization that covers the team. But
friend of the show, though. Friend of the show here.
Friend of the show, absolutely. I like Bill. Who doesn't like Bill Landis? Except he is an Eagles fan, so he's got that mark against him. Fly, Eagles, fly. But that's what I heard. And I wanted to get that out there because I think false narratives, as Chip Kelly would say, y'all make the narratives, right? We make the narratives.
Well, Tim, I'll just say this. I'm not going to pretend that I know what's going on in defensive meeting rooms with Jim Knowles, Larry Johnson, and Ryan Day.
I'm not pretending either.
No. I know.
And I'm not what I understand.
Yeah, I'm not discounting what you're reporting whatsoever. So I want to make that clear. I'm not going to discount the reporting that Alex Gleitman did for us over at LettermenRow.com. I'm not going to discount the reporting of anybody else except maybe one person, but I won't name that person because I knew that it came exactly from Jim Knowles' agent when I saw the tweet about it from somebody who works for the Action. But anyway, there are two sides to every story, and that's what I will say here. I've been asked plenty of times, like, well, how did this happen? Where did this come from? What happened here? And the thing that I've just continued to say, and I will continue to say, because I don't think there's anything else to say, there are two sides to this. There is a Jim Knowles agent side with Jim and his fiance who decided to put out something through a Facebook message, and his sister who's on social media all the time, and Jim himself who will never probably talk about exactly what happened. And then there's a side of Ohio State where all of us in our position, and it's not just exclusive to us, but it's, those guys over there who do the podcast, the guys at Buckeye Huddle, the guys at 24/7, like everybody around this media scope at Cleveland.com and at the Columbus Dispatch, we talk to people at Ohio State. Why? Because that's our jobs. So there's a side of the national and Penn State side and the Knowles side, and there's a side of Ohio State. And I'm not immune to the fact that I get my information from the Ohio State side, so it's probably going to be more shaded toward that. And other people get theirs from Jim Knowles and his agent and Penn State. The bottom line is we will never know what happened here. Was there a rift? Maybe. I think philosophically, at the core, Jim and Larry probably have different views on how to run defensive line when it comes to playing defensive football, and that's okay. Maybe it didn't work out. Maybe Jim was mad. Maybe Ryan Day was mad. We will never know exactly what happened here. And so to discount anybody's reporting on this would be kind of folly because you're getting it from every side here. And that's what happens when $3 million decisions are made by a guy who just won a national championship and had 2 years remaining on his contract. The bottom line is Ohio State needs a new defensive coordinator. There are plenty of
Correct.
names out. There's plenty of names out there. There's plenty of options for Ryan Day. He was on Kelly Clarkson yesterday. He was on Jimmy Fallon on Monday. He's been the most active man in college football for the last week because he's a national champion. He's been on the road on Tuesday after he was in New York on Monday. On Tuesday,
Getting his just desserts.
but also, Tim, on Tuesday, he was in Missouri looking at a 5-star offensive tackle,
Correct.
visiting him. He was in Mississippi visiting a 5-star safety. Then he was in Louisiana visiting the number one safety in America. Then he was
Dude,
down in Georgia yesterday with the entire defensive staff recruiting. Like, he's the most – I hope he's collecting Delta Sky miles because he's going to be in those international lounges for the rest of his life with all of that stuff.
I think this is the beauty of private jets.
Yeah, no kidding. Ryan Day's got a big decision to make here. And – to be honest, if I'm being honest with everybody and transparent, it has been dead quiet. Like, I don't know a lot of what you're hearing on this defensive coordinator stuff. I know the internal candidates are there. I know that those are legitimate options for Ryan Day. I know there's been a couple of names floated out there. Chiefs defensive line coach Joe Collins' name has been tossed around there. Other names, Jim Leonard's name is around there. I'm not going to, again, it's been pretty quiet. And if I have information, I will give it. I don't have a lot of information right now because it's been, again, relatively quiet. Now, what we do know, Tim, as the staff turnover continues to have potential, Justin Fry did interview, according to Doug Samuels over at Football Scoop and a couple of Bears beat writers. Justin Fry did interview with Ben Johnson yesterday on Wednesday for the open Chicago Bears offensive line coaching job.
Yes.
That's of interest because I know through some sources at Ohio State that there have been talks of a contract extension for Justin Fry. There's been indications that there would be a contract extension for Justin Fry. I believe that will still be on the table, but now the Bears thing may throw a wrinkle into that because if the Bears offer him that job, that would be a difficult one to turn down. I don't know what Justin's decision would be there, but I know that he did interview there. Then there's the Chip Kelly of it all, where there's NFL teams that are interested in him, whether it's Jacksonville, whether it's Houston, that Jonathan Jones over covering the NFL has indicated that he's a candidate in Houston. The coaching carousel is starting to spin for the national champions. It's spinning also for the national runner-up. Notre Dame it just found its defensive coordinator, former Ohio State defensive coordinator Chris Ash. Like, this stuff that usually happens throughout the entire month of December and January, Tim, is now truncated into this very short period and gives a lot of Ohio State fans a little bit of anxiety considering, we're 4 weeks from spring ball and we don't know who's going to be calling the defense.
Yeah. If I was just put in charge of the cherry picker and being able to go and cherry pick guy, and I think he's been asked about it, right? I mean, Jeff Hafley, whether he would have interest. And we all know he exited Boston College stage right because Boston College was way behind when it came to NIL and a lot of other things in this modern environment of major college football. And boy, just think about him taking that job and COVID hitting, and he never really had a chance to really show himself, I don't think, at Boston College. But I digress. I think he left Boston College better than he found it. Let me put it that way. But I've always liked the conversations we had with that guy. I thought he was a notch above in so many respects about his approach to defensive football. He paid immediate dividends at Ohio State, but with a talented roster, right? But in 2019, paid immediate dividends. He reminded me, my impression of him reminded me of my first impression of Ryan Day in 2017 when he was brought on. Obviously Chip Kelly had been let go with the San Francisco 49ers, but the bottom line is there was something different about Ryan Day in the conversations, man. You could feel it. It's not casting aspersions on anybody else, but I liked the conversations with those guys. I liked their sort of easygoing manner with us, but you could see the forward thinking with the products they put on the field, with the ideas they espouse. So I would cherry pick. The first guy I would cherry pick would be Jeff Hafley. I think Chris Ash did a good job with Luke Fickell way back in 2014, and good for him. They're back together again. We'll see if they can stave off the. Not no, they're not back together again. Where did Chris Ash go? Notre Dame, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, Chris Ash is together with Marcus Freeman. I was getting my things all mixed up there because I've got 1,000 thoughts on this. But I like the way Caleb Downs. I like the way they activated Caleb Downs last year in this defense, especially after that Oregon game. You know, when the rift developed, right? Nah, no rift. That defense ended up being number 1 in the country in total defense and defense against the score. That's the best you can be, you know.
Yeah.
So no rift. I mean, boy, if Larry Johnson had a problem with Jim Knowles or vice versa, boy, they sure did. They sure did mask it well by the way they played. My point is, you've got a guy who's been a defensive coordinator in the NFL for a couple of times, Tim Walton, who I think has done a fabulous job with the secondary. And then you got Matt Guerrieri, who all he's done is studied at the right arm of Jim Knowles for many years. So I think if you want status quo, you go with one of those guys because you want to kind of keep doing what you were doing. Now, Jim Knowles benefited from a great amount of talent this past year, guys who opted to come back, and he really squeezed that watermelon. You know what I mean? I mean, he got all out of that watermelon, and especially as the year went on, especially from that front four. I mean, Jack Sawyer's never played better than he did the last several games of the year. JT Tuimoloau became a force. They became that force you expect them to be for 4 years in a row. Well, that's weird thinking in a lot of respects. But the bottom line was, I think you continue what you got going there because I think there's pretty good chemistry in that room, in that defensive staff room. Now, whether you'll mess it up, if you name one guy over another, well, that's for Ryan Day to sort out and figure out. But I think it's a very talented room still with James Laurinaitis and Matt Guerrieri and Tim Walton and Larry Johnson.
Well, I think the most important thing to remember, Tim, is no matter what, Ohio State has to make one hire. Like, they can promote 2 guys to be co-coordinators. They can find a new full defensive coordinator. They can, I guess, jumble it all up if they want. But the bottom line is, like, no matter what, they have to make a hire. Yes. Is that hire, is it promoting Matt Guerrieri and Tim Walton and then hiring another defensive line coach? That's something that, Ryan Day's toyed with at times, but never officially done. Is it hire a full-on defensive coordinator at probably a $2.5–3 million price tag, and then keep everybody else to status quo? No matter what, Ryan Day has to make a hire. He is 2 for 3, and I've said this a lot. He's 2 for 3 with his defensive coordinator hires. Jeff Hafley, 1-year rental, great hire. Kerry Combs, 10 games, awful hire. I mean, great motivator, great secondary coach, deserves a lot of credit for making Ohio State BIA in the 2010s. Yep. We do not take that away from Kerry Combs on this program, and we never will. But as a defensive coordinator, it was awful. And so after 10 games, he was stripped of his play calling duties, and after the 2021 season, he was fired. I guess relieved, however you would like to say it. And then in 2022, Ryan Day hired Jim Knowles, another home run hire just like Jeff Hafley, and it ended up with the Buckeyes at the top of the mountain in college football. So he's 2 for 3 on defense coordinator hires. He's got to go 3 for 4. This is probably the most pivotal one of his tenure because it's not trying to get to the top with hiring Jim Knowles. It's maintaining it at the top. And so this is a pivotal hire with your defense. And again, no matter what, he has to make at least one hire. And so we'll see what he does there. As for Fry, we'll see how that progresses. As for Chip Kelly, we'll see how that progresses. But there's not really any new information there other than that Justin Fry is a candidate for the Bears offensive line job. Yeah. And I think that's where the carousel kind of hits a standstill right now, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and the other thing, like you pointed out, I mean, if he had somebody immediately in mind for that coordinator's job, because I'm under the impression that probably Jim Knowles' agent was making their thoughts, their plans, whatever you want to call it, aspirations known, even before the national championship game. So if if he had any immediate plans there, you would think he would have already pulled the trigger. Jim Knowles hadn't been gone very long, though.
Yeah.
As we sit here, and but it does leave you. It's a time to sit back and not do knee jerk, especially if the guy you were going to knee jerk with is not interested, right? But you always run it by top to bottom, right? On who you're looking at and who you're going to offer. And you would think maybe there is some fire there or smoke there when it comes to waiting for somebody's season to be totally over. And so we'll see how that goes. I'm intrigued. Calling it a pivotal hire, I don't know if I'd call it that, because they just won the national championship, and they're going to be extremely talented on both sides of the ball again. But this is a reloading year for Ohio State. There are going to be some growing pains on offense and defense with a new quarterback, a new middle linebacker calling shots, 2 new corners. Write them down. I can name all the missing positions. 4 new guys in the starting lineup on the front, a defensive front, 2 new tackles. Write them down the line. So it's going to be a little bit of a change, big change maybe in that regard. But the bottom line is, as I've told people, I think Ryan Day's become a better hirer, ever how you want to pronounce it, than. Did he luck out with Jeff Hafley? No. Boy, I think he dreamed about making that joint move. Don't you agree?
Yeah.
If he ever got the job, Jeff Hafley's going to be the first guy he's going to offer, and he did. But then Jeff Hafley all of a sudden was plucked out of nowhere by Boston College. So I think I give Ryan the benefit of the doubt on whoever he picks, even if he elevates somebody from within. He knows those guys. You know what I mean?
Let's not discount that he also hired Greg Madison to pair with Jeff Hafley. That was very critical for a young Ryan Day, first-year head coach, to have that kind of voice in there with a young Jeff Hafley. Would they do that again? An older,
they go that route. That's
an older. He's done it before. An older, seasoned veteran defensive coordinator who's been around the block a time or two, or in Greg Madison's case, like a billion times, because he was as veteran of a defensive coach as they come. And then he paired him with a 30-some-year-old Jeff Hafley who captivated the room when he spoke. So that's the path that he's taken before. He's also hired a home run guy in Jim Knowles, and he's also went a pretty safe route in Kerry Combs, and we see which ones worked out and which ones didn't. So again, there's not much new development there. It's just that Ohio State does, in fact, need a defensive coordinator. I need to go get some lunch. Tim does as well. That's Tim May, the 41-year vet. I know where I'm going for lunch. You see it in the corner here.
Do you have coupons? Do they give you coupons too? Because I haven't gotten any.
I'm not going to confirm or deny, Tim.
Okay.
I would speak about Wendy's regardless of whether they are on the screen or not. I love, and it's probably showing at 28 that I'm starting to love Wendy's probably a little too much. So
I told you my order is Cobb salad, which is one of the best you can get in a drive-through. My opinion, the best, and 6-piece nuggets, and I'm a happy camper.
Wow, I didn't know you went camping, Tim. That's Tim. He's going to go camping.
I know, by the way. I'm like AJ Foyt. As AJ Foyt said, once he got successful in racing, he wasn't going to be sleeping in his car or camping out unless he had no money. He was always going to be in a motel somewhere. That's Tim May for you.
Find Tim in a motel, not camping. He'll still be eating Wendy's either way. I'm just Spencer Holbrook. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Like the video below. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're talking Buckeyes 365 days a year. Might try to talk to Mick Walker about recruiting here since the Buckeyes are on the road, jet setting all over the United States of America looking for top talent. For now, just go to lettermenrow.com right now. $1 for your first 7 days. Read all about the national champs, their pursuit in a defense coordinator, their pursuit to repeat next year. Again, Tim May on the other side of your screen. I'm just Spencer. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll see you guys back over at lettermenrow.com.